I have the pleasure and honor to introduce our next speaker, Minister David Piccini, Ontario's Minister of Labour, Immigration, Training and Skills Development. CBTU and the Canadian Executive Board recently signed a resolution, Christmas last year, to align our efforts to harmonize national safety standards. We know the challenges of our workers getting certified in one jurisdiction and having to get recertified when they go to work in another jurisdiction, and sometimes that a standard is not as good as the one that they had previously achieved. And so this is something that has gotten in the way of our productivity and getting our workers to the workplace at the right time and trained to the highest standard that's available in the country. And earlier this month, I had the opportunity to address the federal, provincial, territorial annual meeting of ministers responsible for labor in Quebec City to underscore how important this initiative is for removing barriers that currently limit our mobility. Minister Piccini has been a champion of this. He has worked closely with the federal government and Secretary of State for Labor Zuricelli. He is lobbying his other counterparts or labor ministers from other provinces, and this is a guy who gets it. He's a true friend of labor. He's a true friend of the building trades. Please, a round of applause, a big welcome to David Piccini.
Thanks, Sean, for that warm welcome. I wish my wife was here to hear that. That was fantastic. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Good morning. Yeah, that's better. Thank you. They say you start these sort of things with a joke, and then I saw I was up before George St. Pierre, so I thought, no joke. That guy's serious business, and I don't want it to be misconstrued. But it's wonderful to be here with all of you. Sean, thank you for your leadership and for inviting me here to speak with all of you today. It's been a real honor and a privilege, I've got to say, working, just walking in, seeing so many of you that I have a privilege of working with every day, and I hope you see what you've said to me and to our government reflected in legislation, because all of you have had a hand in the pen that is drafting progressive labor legislation in Ontario. C'est un plaisir d'être ici à Gatineau, une ville qui relie littéralement les provinces et nous rappelle à quel point nous sommes plus forts lorsque nous travaillons ensemble. It's a pleasure to be here, a city that connects provinces and reminds us how much stronger we are when we work together. The spirit of that connection and partnership is exactly what brings us here today. Because when we talk about Canada's future, we're talking about the people who build it. So a big and profound thank you again to the Canadian Building Trades Union, to Sean and the entire team for the invitation and the leadership you show, you and the executive and all of you, in bringing workers, employers, and government together to deliver the nation-building projects that this country depends on. And I want to especially zero in on that nation-building piece. And I've said it to many of you who've heard in Ontario, but we're at an exciting moment when we're talking about nation building. As the grandson of an immigrant who came here, who joined a union, who benefited from the collective work all of you do to often protect the most vulnerable in our community. But he was part of a generation who could really proudly say upon retirement that they built this country. And they built the skylines and things we often see in cities like Toronto. And that's what we've got to do again here in this country. And we have to do it because in times of great economic uncertainty, the best thing we can do right here, right now, is to seize on the immense potential we have right here in Canada. From new nuclear in Darlington, small modular reactors, to pipelines, to Highway 413 and the Bradford Bypass. I don't need President Trump's approval for any of those things, nor do you. We can get them done. And we can't afford to sit idly by. And that's why in Ontario we've made a historic investment of $220 billion, a plan to build rooted in nation-building projects. In Ontario, of course, the construction sector employs close to 600,000 workers, roughly 1 in every 14 jobs across the province. Just let that sink in for a moment in terms of the impact you have on communities from Port Hope, where I'm from, right to Toronto, up to Thunder Bay and beyond. Across Canada, construction employs more than 1.6 million workers and contributes more than 7% to our GDP. So when our construction sector moves, our economy moves with it. We're building nation-building projects, as I said, like the G7's first SMR, small modular reactor, and new nuclear. Just pause for a moment as on the other side of the river, we gather for the Canadian Nuclear Conference. The courage of a premier to actually say we're going to build new nuclear, something that hasn't been conceptualized in over 50 years. And when you think to projects like the SMR project, the thousands of building trades men and women that were on that site, I am excited as both a resident of Port Hope, the municipality in which we are building new nuclear, and as a resident of the province of Ontario to welcome so many of you whom we're going to rely on to build Canada's first new nuclear plant, the largest plant contemplated on planet Earth. And we can think big like that because we're backed up by people like you who can get the job done. We've got the largest investment in public transit in Canadian history. And at the heart of delivering projects like these, as I said, is having the people and the workforce ready to be able to get the work done. Because workers are at the backbone of our economy, and you're the ones who build our homes, power our industries, and deliver on these nation-building projects we're talking about. And we know over the next decade we're going to need another 400,000 skilled trades workers, another 160,000 in the construction sector alone. But to train the next generation, we're making historic investments to do that. You know, I think as I look out here, I see people who have a profound appreciation and commitment to our next generation. At every union training hall I have visited, I've seen the commitment you have for our next generation. And when in Ontario, they treated union halls differently and didn't provide the guaranteed to max funding that they did other training agents, we rectified that to treat unions equally because we value the work you do, and we know that when it comes to graduating an apprentice and our completion rates, it's higher when we back union training. That's why we've invested another $60 million to create an additional 12,000 new skilled trades training seats over the coming years. Just last week, I was in Thunder Bay, where distance can be real barriers. We're making it easier to train closer to home. I visited local ironworkers training center there, a beneficiary of our Skills Development Fund capital stream, and I saw the incredible new facility that's there. And so not only did we restore and treat you equally in terms of funding, but for the first time in Ontario's history, we said we're going to back union training by investing in the bricks and mortar to get the job done. Through our Skills Development Fund capital stream, it has been a privilege to visit so many of you, to see the expansion to your training centers to benefit the next generation. Because if there's one thing I've heard from you, it's that a commitment to health and safety, a commitment to those training centers meant dipping into retirees, going to those retirees who are going to contribute a few extra cents, dollars to make that happen. Well, now you've got a partner in the government to invest in that training because we see the value of what you're doing. We've expanded the Ontario Youth Apprenticeship Program and the Specialist High-Skilled Major. And I've seen, again, so many of you partner with local school boards, invite our next generation into your training centers to support a next generation of young men and women. And you've done that with incredible grace. And when we talk about bringing shop class back to high school, we're not going to do it alone, just investing in high schools, which we're doing. We're going to do it investing in innovative partnerships that get youth in communities like mine and all over Ontario into your training halls so that they can see what it means to be part of the building trades. They can see what it means to be part of a family, to be part of a team, to contribute back to the very fabric that is our country. And through our Level Up Career Fairs, again, something all of you, this is essentially a thank you speech because of the things all of you are doing to enrich the province that I call home. Our Level Up Career Fairs, where I see all of you out at our Level Up Career Fairs. For the first time in Ontario's history, we're bringing students together. We're giving them real hands-on experience. They're working with you, alongside you, to inspire their hearts and minds. Teachers are telling me they've never had this sort of experience before that they're now getting thanks to all of you. And it's been a remarkable opportunity to meet employers, to meet union leaders, to get hands-on exposure and understand what a career in the skilled trades can mean. And last year alone, 57,000 youth, parents and job seekers attended these fairs. And what was so exciting was going through the McDonald's drive-through window, having a mom there and say, Dave, my daughter went to the Level Up in Grafton. For those of you who don't know where that is, small little town in eastern Ontario. And she said she's inspired and she wants to become a tradeswoman. And I thought, it's working. The work we are doing to tackle grandparents, parents, and inspire a next generation, it is working. And today we've got over 90,000 registered apprentices in Ontario. There are more women, and again, pat yourselves on the back for this. There are more women today registered for apprenticeships in Ontario than at any time in our province's history. That's thanks to you. And we're continuing to open more doors for youth, for women, for underrepresented groups so that they can land a better job with a bigger paycheck. But building that workforce is only part of the solution. That's why we're focusing on removing barriers and making it easier for skilled workers to move safely and efficiently to where they're needed most. Ontario put in place as-of-right legislation, mobility rules earlier this year. Once the credentials are confirmed, certified workers in good standing from other provinces can work within Ontario within 10 business days. That's our guarantee. And we're the first province in Canada to do this. And that means workers get on the job sooner and projects get moving faster. But labor mobility only works if safety standards line up with it. When we met last December, we talked about how internal trade barriers and duplicative training requirements are coming at a real cost. This costs our country up to $200 billion annually, including $14 billion in the construction sector alone. And it slows down major projects, driving up costs and preventing skilled workers from getting on the job sites where they are needed the most. And why does this matter? When you look to projects, large projects in Windsor, Ontario, that had 30% building trades workers from out of province. You look to projects like the small modular reactor in Darlington or the new nuclear plant or the critical minerals we're going to need to mine, the massive infrastructure expansions we're going to need to grow it. The Ellis Don PCL project at Trillium, that is the largest hospital in Canada under construction. It's going to rely on a nimble, highly skilled workforce. And the site, we know, when you misunderstand spotter duties, for example, just a little example, it could shut down a site for retraining, losing a day of productivity and 3 hours of training time. And that's the cost when we don't bring the rest of this country and all work together to have a high training standard from coast to coast to coast. It's lost time, it's lost productivity, and it's unnecessary barriers. And as you know, Ontario is leading the charge to harmonize training requirements in the construction sector. As a member of the Canadian Association of Administrators of Labour Legislation, or CAL, we've been working with counterparts from across Canada. Just 3 weeks ago, I was here in Quebec with other labour ministers to advance this work, and we made real progress. Every minister at that table endorsed Ontario's national work plan to harmonize occupational health and safety training, a plan that was backed by the CBTU, a plan that was backed by Canada's largest employers. And in Ontario, we're putting that plan to action. And what was so significant, I know, just a politician saying this, but when you all get together, usually the meetings of these politicians is to arm wrestle and trade about verbs and nouns and little words in a news release. Well, I'm pleased to say that this was the first meeting that brought you to the table. Sean was there. Sean was there alongside Steve Chaplin from Ellis Don and other employer leaders. And it wasn't just a pithy news release. It was an action plan that backed our plan to raise standards in every corner of this country to protect workers. And that starts with what we're calling the Ontario 7 high-impact training areas that you've all had a shape in creating. Working at heights, slips, trips, and falls, mobile elevated work platforms, construction supervisor, entry-level construction worker, hoisting and rigging, trenching and shoring, and more. I mean, I often say, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, and this is how we're starting to harmonize across Canada. And it really shows what's possible. Falls remaining leading cause of injury in construction, yet Ontario's program reduced lost injury times and lost injury time claims by nearly 20% versus 6% in the rest of Canada. That's what happens when you work alongside labor for high standards to make sure workers are well trained on job sites. Harmonizing training like this, high-risk training nationally, can reduce duplication and keep our workers safer. And this matters because yesterday on the day of mourning, we had another first in Ontario. We've said to all of you, you have a home on the Queen's Park grounds, and this is nonpartisan. All parties back this. To put a construction worker memorial on the grounds of Queen's Park. And we heard a story from a worker. Simple things, like mom used to make 3 sandwiches, now she makes only 2. Rooms that used to fill with laughter are quieter. That's the cost, the real life family cost when we lose a worker. So we're not going to stop in Ontario. We're going to be unrelenting, and I need your support in your respective provinces to make sure we're unwavering in our commitment to safety. We're unwavering in our commitment to rise all tides. Rising tides raise all boats, lift all boats, and that's what we all need to work together at doing. As a part of this work, we're taking action in Ontario. It's about practicing what you preach. We're standardizing requirements by recognizing CSA national standards on elevated work platforms, including updating training requirements. It's another step towards harmonizing. And to support this work, we're proposing to establish a new minister's authority that would streamline interjurisdictional recognition of high health and training safety standards. This will support improved training portability, stronger workplace safety, fewer duplicative training requirements, and it's about removing barriers, letting qualified workers get to work. And as I said, we are unrelenting in our commitment for high standards, to make sure that we work with our counterparts to adopt the highest standards nationally so that our workers come home at the end of the day. But harmonization is only one part of that equation. Because while we work to remove barriers, we're also working to strengthen protections on the ground, to make sure that workers move more freely. They're working in safer and modern environments. That's where our broader legislative work comes in. Last week, alongside many colleagues, we introduced a Power Act, Protecting Ontario Workers, a bundle at Queen's Park. And that includes measures like recognizing CSA-approved respirators and regulation to make it easier for workers to use respirators, made to a Canadian standard. You know, I was down on a work site in a tunnel with men and women who had come to me, many of these LUNA members, and they said, look, we're being forced to wear a respirator that is worse than what we were wearing before. When we have weak standards and we don't enforce them, that's the human cost. By updating to a high national standard, we protect those workers in that tunnel and the particulates that they inhale. We protect and make sure the respirators that they're using are the best. Because to build the best, we've got to ensure that we're protecting you with the best. We're mandating Type 2 hard hats, where side impact risks exist to improve protection for workers. These are modern standards for modern job sites that raise the bar for safety. Taken together, clear and predictable rules don't just help protect workers, they help employers plan. We cannot afford to let all of you down in this efforts. And that's why, as I said, through these progressive pieces of legislation, we've brought in place Type 2 hard hats, mandating that over time and implementing it, as many of you are already doing in your training centers and as many of your employer partners have already done. Through Working for Workers 6, we created a new job-protected leaves. We required common sense things like properly fitting protective equipment for all workers. If you're working for worker 7, we included automated external defibrillators on large construction projects with 20 or more workers. And I met a young guy on a job site. When cardiac events happen, seconds matter. And Mike collapsed on a job site. He told his supervisor that he was feeling some pains in his chest, went to walk to drive himself to the hospital, didn't make it as far as this car and collapsed on the street. By chance, there was a paramedic driving by, and he woke up with a defibrillator on his chest. We know that you're at greater risk for cardiac events, and that's why we mandated it in legislation on large construction sites, so that you are protected. And situations like Mike's don't depend on happenstance by a paramedic, but by a well-trained colleague. And what I'm so excited about with this is it's not just the defibrillator, it's that we're actually training workers to use defibrillators. And that's not just going to benefit you on your work site. That's going to benefit you when you're in the arena with your kids at night, at hockey practice or a game. These are the types of things we're doing to promote a safety culture in the province of Ontario. And it's a powerful reminder that the right equipment in the right place at the right time can make a difference. And that's what this work is all about. It's about people. So in closing, I just want to say together, we've brought forward progressive measures that make sure we're unrelenting, unwavering in safety on job sites, from PPEs to defibrillators to hard hats to harmonizing our health and safety standards. We're taking it very seriously in the province of Ontario under Premier Ford's leadership. But we're doing it with you. We're doing it with the building trades. And I want to thank you for opening your doors to all of us. I know sometimes, when I've been at some of the locals at the shop stewards meetings, welcoming a conservative on site, sometimes people, what's he doing here? But we show up because we care. And when you take the time to work with your elected members of all political stripes to make us better public policy makers, it matters. And as I said, over the last 3 years, it's been such a privilege working alongside Canadian Building Trades members. You've made us better as public policy makers. You've made Ontario better. And you've elevated the playing field for all workers in Ontario, not just in a union environment. And you should be really proud of that. So it's an honor to work with all of you. And as we nation build, I know who's going to get the job done. It's all of you. And I'm grateful as an Ontarian, grateful as a Canadian, to work alongside all of you and to live in a country where we don't compromise on health and safety and where we make sure we have a well-trained workforce to get the job done. Thank you for your leadership. It's an honor to be here with you today.